Hello, it's Duncan. Last episode, we migrated our item data, adding in IDs that we hadn't anticipated when we first wrote the code. To make this safe, we deployed production code that could cope with the old and new versions of data, an expand phase. Now that all our data is migrated, we need to contract, removing the now redundant code to leave everything as simple as we can make it. We'd left the code last episode in the middle of an expand contract refactoring. We'd expanded the code so that items had an ID, and that ID could be present or not present. It's this nullable ID here, so that our production system could cope with either version of the stock file, the ones with or without the ID. Then we ran the code to upgrade the stock file and installed that into production. So now our stock file actually does have IDs, but our items can cope with not having an ID, and that's a complication our code doesn't need anymore. So what we're going to do today is contract the code, removing the functionality we no longer need. And that essentially means making this ID non-nullable. Now we had a constructor here to populate that with null, so we can get rid of that. And let's just chase those ramifications through the code. Now the constructor is no longer available for item without ID from, but that's okay because we no longer have items without ID to be read from our file. So we can delete this, and that will cause an issue here. And now we can just get rid of this line altogether. Try and build again. Now for test items, we can either add an ID so that we're always forced to have one, or we can generate them. And generating them was working quite well for us in migration. So let's take that code out of our migration. And here it is. Go back to test data. Let's paste it in here. And now the ID we want is going to be an ID with the initials from our name. And we'll always just use 1. And this initials from was taking a non-blank string, but it would equally well work on a string. And once again, that might fail, but in our test, we don't expect it to. Let's try that. So that compiles, but now we have some test failures. Let's go and have a look. Firstly, migration tests fail, but we don't actually need the migration tests anymore because we performed the migration. So maybe we just delete that and also these approved files. That leaves us with list stock tests, has some errors. Let's have a look. Now that our items always have IDs, we're going to have written an ID in here. So this is going to be B1 with 2 tabs. Let's check how we're doing. Okay, narrowing it down. Item types for toString. Well, again, we're now generating an ID. So this will be CB1 for country banana. And the other one that's failing, this will be B1 for banana. And that just leaves us with our persistence tests. Let's go and have a look. Okay, fails to load with blank name. It will only be a blank name now if there's an ID in front. So this would need ID and 2 tabs. So the blank name is now in between these 2 tabs, and let's put an ID in there. But that reminds us we should have a test for a blank ID. I actually wrote the code for that already. In some ways, we've been a bit cheeky here. We've deployed 2 different versions of the code, but we only had tests for one of them. And we were running a production system with tests for the old version, but not the new version. If there had been more people in this project, again, we might need to be more fastidious about that, but I think it will all work out in the end. So we're going to duplicate this and say what happens if we have a blank ID. In that case, the ID would be nothing, but we'd have banana in here. And this would be blank ID. See how we're doing. We messed this one up, put another tab in there. And now these others are all failing because we don't have an ID at the front. And so its interpretation of which field is wrong is now wrong. So maybe we'll just take this and this and say, if we see that in here. Then we want to prepend an ID and a \t. Let's try that. 2 left. This looks like our production code is actually wrong. So let's go and find that. That's persisting here. And that's because we need 4 fields in here now, actually. And 2 more. Same replace as before. And daf quality is the same again. Wonderful, we're passing all our tests. I did see a warning flash up at some point during the compile, so let's just have a look, see whether we can see that. Don't know what this is. No. Probable bugs. Let's have a look at that. When branch is never reachable. So this now is saying that ID can never be null. So this branch can never be reached, and we don't need this code. This is more code we need to remove as part of our contract phase. So if that's gone, then this is simply that line. There we go. So let's just see what changes we made as part of the contract phase. Item, we've removed a constructor because we no longer have a nullable ID. Item tests have changed to cope with a change to our test data. The stock chests have changed because, again, we changed the way we generate test data. The same as persistence tests. In persisting, we've removed the ability to write a line with a null ID and to read a line without an ID. And then finally, we've deleted the migration altogether. So let's commit this, and this is the contract. Before we push, we'll just run that up and see what it looks like. And there we are. It would be nice, of course, now we've got IDs to show them here. So let's just add a little bonus for our customer. Let us go off to our listing. And in the view models template, we'll add in the ID. So that's the header. And that's the ID. And then we populate that in the listing. So this is our ID, and that is our ID value, because our ID was a wrapper on a non-blank string, or in fact, we just say ID to string. Have a look, see if that looks okay. Refresh. And there we have it. Back to the code. Run all the tests. And now we've changed the output. These approval files have all changed. Now have the IDs in our HTML. If we're happy with all of those, we can approve them. Run the tests. And that's locked in that change. Commit that. And our contract phase is over. Expand contract refactorings allow us to migrate things in production that would require downtime if we did them any other way. So they're a great tool in our toolbox. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, then please subscribe to the channel to see more. And consider buying the book that I wrote in that price called Java to Kotlin, a Refactoring Guidebook, details of which are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching.